All right, welcome to another episode of the NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. This episode, we are talking about Dynasty football strategies, and I am joined by Dave Heilman, Senior Dynasty Analyst for the SGP and Fantasy, just SGP and Network. How are you doing?
Doing great. I just got done with the show talking Dynasty rankings. It is free agency. Supposedly it doesn't start till Wednesday. This is a fun time for Dynasty players.
Well, I'm glad you say that because I'm rather new to Dynasty. I've done it a few years. This was my first year actually being a commissioner of league, and we're really trying to figure out a lot of the just when to have the draft, when to kind of have the league going, and I want to talk a little bit about that. But before we go ahead and do that, obviously. One of the main questions that I wonder, and maybe a lot of people do, what are some of the best platforms that you use for Dynasty? Because I've got a couple that I use, but I'm always interested to see, those who are really into Dynasty, what are some of the best platforms that you would prefer?
Yeah, Sleeper is my preferred. Number one, it's free and it's easy to use. And if you're in a lot of Dynasty leagues like I am, it's just annoying to have to go to like different platforms and check your teams, and it's all right there. I do have some My Fantasy League, but I prefer Sleeper.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried My Fantasy League. I mean, those are customizable, right?
Yeah, it's customizable. If you play Devy leagues, which is kind of a whole other subject, you can create players. But it gives you a lot more to do, like with custom rules. And so, like most of my contract Dynasty leagues are on My Fantasy League, where like the auction drafts and stuff like that. You have contracts. That's much easier to track and all that. I don't need to have an Excel sheet. It's all based in there, so it's worth it. But it is expensive. You're paying $60 or $70 per year per Dynasty league versus Sleeper, which is just free.
Yeah, and what I found with that, I was doing a league and it was customizable, and the league commissioner didn't quite explain the rules, so it was a little bit hard to understand. And being someone who has done some of the traditional redraft leagues and all of that, I wasn't really kind of understanding. First of all, from the draft process, through the league, and it was just a little bit more of a learning curve that way. Sleeper now, it is obviously, if you know what the roster looks like, it is super simple to and user friendly.
Yeah, and as far as Sleeper, you can use spreadsheets. You can also change the nickname. So like a lot of people for Devy leagues will take the kickers, not have kickers in your league. So this kicker is Caleb Williams, for example.
So here's a question then. As far as Dynasty rosters, I've seen it done a few different ways. I actually even was in a 32 team league. I don't think I'd ever do that again. But that was also an IDP league. I've been in regular leagues. I've also been in the Superflex. What do you prefer as far as roster construction?
Yeah, I mean, your traditional 2 running backs, but I do like 3 receivers and a tight end. Give me a super flex league. I prefer super flex, especially in Dynasty. I think super flex brings a different level to the talent pool, a lot more strategy. And I'm of the mindset of I want an active league. And if you do 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 1 tight end, kind of your old school traditional format, and 1 quarterback, why do you need to trade, especially if you have like a 15 player bench? You could literally just draft 7 players and squat for a couple of years.
Right. And that kind of leads me as well to that, bench. And as I've kind of learned, taxi squad is kind of an interesting thing. Obviously, some people just use it as a rookie, squad. How do you use the taxi squad, and how many, taxi squad spots are just kind of optimum?
Yeah, I've been in a few leagues where they have like 1, 2, or three taxi spots. It's like, what's the point? Especially if they can only rookies can be on there. I would much prefer like a 25-man roster. You have, you can just put the taxi up top, or you do 20-man and then 5 taxis. And the reason you would do that is to kind of keep the free agent pool a little bit less dry. But yeah, I just think like I guess some of these leagues and there's like 2 taxi spots. I'm like, what is the point of this?
Yeah, and so like as a first time commissioner, it was interesting because we had some people that hadn't done the taxi and they were putting veterans in there, and we kind of had to have that discussion, but thankfully I know everybody, and we were able to kind of make that discussion. Now going into the second year, we're going to be making that transition to rookies. So we might have to, we've got 3 spots now. We may have to just kind of go ahead and keep 3 spots and maybe even add roster spots.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally what people do is that it's only for rookies. So on their sophomore year, they have to graduate. And so in my contract leagues, we allow them for their life of their rookie contract to be on there as long as they're not used in a roster. So if you elevated a guy, did not use him in a lineup, you can put him right back on the taxi squad. But if you used him in a lineup any week of the year, he is now part of the active roster. And if like you had a guy in your taxi squad and I traded for him, he could go on to my taxi squad. But at the end of the rookie year, you can't add people like during that offseason or that sophomore year, like, oh, I'm going to add this 3rd-year guy because he's never played a snap. Like, no. If only rookies go to the taxi squad originally, unless it's via trade.
Well, talk a little bit about that then, like dynasty trades. And obviously we had the first year with the league and everyone's trying to feel each other out. And I'm someone even in, even in redraft leagues, I'm trying to kind of throw a bunch of trades out and just trying to see kind of what people value. What about kind of trades and trade targets, positions, and maybe even trading draft picks? Talk about kind of how you approach that a little bit.
Yeah, as far as you're trading, first thing, if you're new to Dynasty, I would say like chill out on the trading a little bit. Learn values and feel it. It's a really quick way to get a bad taste in your mouth or ruin your team. You're like a redraft person. You're like, oh yeah, running backs are good. Jamal Williams just scored 7 touchdowns in 7 games. I'm going to give you a 1st-round pick. And then like you go in there and everyone in the league is like, you're an idiot. And now you're like, what did I do wrong? And then you're like, oh man, screw this league. I'm out of here. And like, it does take a while to adjust your brain from redraft to dynasty where like receivers have longer shelf lives and running backs aren't as valuable. So like, that's a big part of it. It's just like, kind of be patient. It's okay to use like trade charts and calculators. Like I know some people think that they're like too cool for that. I use them sometimes just to give, like, if I'm trying to like really quickly put together a trade and I'm like, hey, you got a player, I got a player. What's the difference? So I'll pull up Dynasty Trade Calculator or Fantasy Pros, and I'm like, roughly combined, they're saying it's about a mid-second round pick. So I'll reach out to you and say, hey, and maybe I'll start out with a late 2nd round pick, knowing that I could maybe move up to a mid-second versus me just blindly sending you an offer without cross-checking it somewhere.
So what are those websites again?
Fantasy Pros has a dynasty trade value chart for free.
Okay.
Sports Gambling Podcast, we have one that's free. And Dynasty Trade Calculator is, you got to pay for it, but it's not that expensive. DLF has one. Dynasty Nerds have one. So a lot of the sites do. I'm not going to, obviously ours is the best, right? But I like to use 1 or 2 and compare to give me a good idea. And it just tells me I'm in the ballpark. And if I see that like I lost the trade by 5 points, I could care less. If I put a trade poll up and it's, says that I lost, it's not about winning and losing the trade. It's about making your team better. And if I feel like I got the better end of the deal, I'm totally fine with Twitter telling me I'm an idiot.
Have you used that then to kind of maybe ease the mind of someone you're trading with to say, hey, look at this?
It depends on who you're talking to because especially like the people that think calculators are for, for the what are casuals.
Yeah.
They're poo-poo at it, or you get people that only like follow one calculator. So like I had someone last year that, I had Justin Herbert and he said, the fantasy calculator says that I can give you this player plus early second round pick. And I was like, cool, but that's not how I value it. And so like, but I get what he's, where he's coming from.
Yeah, with trades, whether it's in redraft or whatever, I try not to take anything personally, especially if I know the people. Like,
Yeah.
if you throw a trade out, if I throw a trade out, I always tell someone, feel free to counter because, yeah, I mean, it's all about trying to find out what someone values. Like I had a buddy in this league, and he doesn't have really any quarterbacks. He's, and I've got Dak Prescott, plus I've got Trevor Lawrence, I've got Sam Howell, I've got the guy out of Pittsburgh, Sam Pickett, so I've got some of these younger quarterbacks, and I've got a higher draft pick. So I was thinking about kind of getting rid of Dak Prescott, and I'm just going to throw this out at you. Let me know what you think. Just kind of, so I said, I would trade him Dak Prescott, Hunter Henry, and Lockett from the Seattle for Jared Goff, Calvin Ridley, and the number one, actually TJ Hawkinson and his number one pick, which is a little bit later. Is that a little bit?
Is this a super flex league?
This is a super flex league.
Yeah, and so for those that don't play in super flex league, like quarterbacks literally have like zero trade value in one quarterback leagues. And so that like wouldn't change anything. So, I mean, this one's a little complicated because it's got a lot of pieces. And so on the right side, so what you're getting is a late first,
Jared Goff, Calvin Ridley, TJ Hawkinson. And I'm giving up Lockett, Hunter Henry, and Dak Prescott.
Yeah, I mean, Dak Prescott's more valuable than Goff, so there has to be a differential there. I'm pretty high on Hawkinson, so I might lean the other side, but I can see both sides. But Dak is definitely worth more than Goff, and you could see a situation where they draft Anthony Richardson or get a quarterback, and Goff he's younger. But it doesn't seem as much security with him as there is with Dak, which they're kind of like invested in him.
They are, and he also has Christian Kirk on his roster, so he was shopping Ridley, which I like. I like Ridley's upside with what he's able to do. What I'm going to do, I like kind of knowing about the obviously the calculators, because I'm going to go ahead and put that in there and just kind of see, because for me, I take a lot of time kind of trying to see, okay, what does this other team need? And he needs obviously a quarterback. He would need another, tight end, low end tight end, because he's got a higher end tight end, and then another receiver. And Lockett's got a little bit of value, but so it's kind of interesting. But if you have that calculator, I feel like that would give
it gives you a gauge of where you're at, so you don't go in completely blind. And sometimes you might send an offer and somebody immediately accepts it, and you go, "Oh crap!" Like
right,
I gave him too good of a deal. And then it's the opposite, where you go in there and you think you sent a fair offer, and some people are easily offended, and they like quick reject with no counter and no response. So yeah, it's a good way to check yourself.
So speaking of checking yourself, obviously as a commissioner, you have to kind of be, looking at some of these things. And I don't know, when you look at like trades, if you ever, use the
V word.
veto. Yes. If you ever use a veto, because we had an issue. We had someone, it was a pretty one-sided, it looked like a one-sided trade. And a lot of people in chat were complaining about it. And I asked, I asked both people, I said, hey, do you want to do this? And the guy who was giving up, basically he gave up Jalen Hurts, and I think it was for Kirk Cousins. And there was a pick involved, and so everyone was kind of worried like how uneven it was. Number one, this guy that was receiving Kirk Cousins was a Vikings fan, right? But then also he was trying to kind of rebuild, and all that. And we weren't quite at the height of Jalen Hurts yet. It was kind of the middle season. So with something like that, if everyone complains or whatever, do you use the veto, or do you just kind of, try to step back?
Yeah, I mean, it's always easier if you can put stuff in your bylaws ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
cover it. So, like, one thing I do is every off season, I ask the questions. Hey, is everybody back next year? Put in the message board any suggestions you have for next season. If somebody seconds it, I'll put it to a vote. And then if it gets 75% yes, we'll make the change. If not, it's going to stay the same. And so some years nobody puts anything in. Sometimes people put stuff in there. Not everyone likes change. And so I try not to make it like 50-50, because some people just leave if the league is changing constantly, especially in Dynasty where, you're setting yourself up a certain way. Then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden it's a super flex league out of nowhere. And like, that's going to change things. But like in this situation, as far as a veto, it's not. I mean, it's not something you veto, even though people are mad about it. And like when I first started Dynasty, I caught myself in this. Like, it's not a fair trade. It's not a fair trade. There's so many trades out there that you and I could see right now today and say it's not fair. And
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, like, ends up being way better for the opposite side. This one was, pretty clear as day. You don't trade a, 34 or 33-year-old quarterback for a 23-year-old quarterback. Call it even. Um, I know there was a pick involved, but unless it was a high draft pick,
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely see how it hurts the competitive level of the league, because it changes. It's an imbalance of the league when like one person just keeps, like, this person just gained. You're all competing, and you
Mm-hmm.
just saw somebody just get way better and didn't have to pay for it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's how I was kind of, balancing that as a commissioner, and all of that. And when you look at, trades, then also, it, obviously you want to make sure, everyone is committed. And when you're trading draft picks, then do you kind of make sure everyone has paid for the next year, then, or how do you do that with
I
trading?
prefer that.
Hmm.
So, I typically only will allow like the next 2 years draft. So like they'll have this year's picks and they'll have 24s and 25s. They're not trading 26s and 27s. I like the rule that if you trade a first round pick from next year, you have to pay forward, because
Hmm.
if you leave, if that Kirk Cousins guy leaves the league, I have to get someone to fill his team. And so now he's got, Kirk Cousins and Dalvin Cook and everybody but Justin Jefferson on his team, and no draft picks.
Hmm.
And so no one's going to want that team. But if I'm like, hey, man, I got this team, it's kind of crappy, but it's paid for the next 2 seasons. You're like, cool, I'll take it, and I'll rebuild it. But you're like, hey, you got to pay $50 and take this really bad team with no draft capital.
Yeah, I actually had that in the middle of the season. Someone just wasn't paying attention, and they weren't doing well, but they had a fantastic roster, thankfully, but they were all on the bench. And so I was able to talk a buddy of mine into taking that team, and he actually ended up winning the league. So,
Jeez.
yeah, so there you go. I mean, he was happy that I talked him into it.
Yeah, and so I like that rule. And it keeps people invested in the
Hmm.
league as well. Some people do like a rolling pot where like you take one of your, like, let's say you pay $25 a league. You pay 25, that $25 goes into a rolling pot. And then if somebody wins the league 2 years in a row, they get the rolling pot or something like that.
Mm.
Like, some people do that just to keep people invested. Um, Ryan McDowell talked about a very interesting second chance rule, to where, like, especially like, let's say you have two people leave and you're doing a dispersal draft.
Hmm.
A dispersal draft is where, instead of like you get the good team, I get the bad team, we put all the players together and just you and I, the two new guys, draft. But what Ryan is suggesting is that you go to the rest of the league and say, who else wants in? And so you get people reinvigorated in the league, excited about the league, because they get to jump in. And like I've only had one dispersal in my dynasty leagues, and I remember people asking, "Can I join in?" And I was like, "No, you can't do that." And now I'm thinking about it, like, yes, I should have let them do that. Like,
Hmm.
let people let people have fun with it. at the end of the day, it should be about fun. But again, like you said, you can't have people that are just out of control that can ruin the league. So having stuff in your bylaws really protects you versus like making the rules up on the fly, especially as a commissioner that you're one of the competitors.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I veto a trade and let's say I'm the number 2 seed, you're the number 1 seed, and you just got better, and then I veto the trade, it looks like it's benefiting me to give you Kirk Cousins back.
I won't tell you. Well, so yeah, I was in a 32 team league, and there was a rule that you could only have one quarterback on your roster, and it was crazy. But anyway, toward the end, I won't tell you who it was because I definitely don't recommend being in it. But toward the end, I ended up being in the consolation bracket, so I could win some of my money back, and it was $100 buy-in, right? And there were a few teams that disagreed with things that were happening in the league, so they left during the playoffs. My opponent left, and this commissioner didn't like me throughout the year because I was asking questions in chat. I was challenging things. They didn't like that. So in the consolation bracket, I was basically facing a team that didn't have an owner. And so the commissioner went in and adjusted his roster to face me so that I would lose. It was just ridiculous. And then as soon as I lost, they kicked me out of the league.
Yeah, that's just, as a commissioner, the power can definitely go to people's head. And you just, I always tell people like safe leagues is extremely important if you're joining random leagues. But like for me, I always prefer leagues that I know people.
Mm-hmm.
And for these kind of reasons, like not everybody's going to get along, and like way too many like times there's like infighting, but like it never gets to that point where people are literally like that's garbage.
It was not fun, and part of it. So we did have the money was part of League Safe, right? And so then everyone has to vote on that. But I was just one person, so everything kind of went through because of that. So now with that on that topic, what do you prefer, like pay options and sites then for your leagues?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a league where like you're joining and you don't know people, then you need a professional site, whether it's League Safe, or I'm not sure if there's many others, but unless you're, going through some where the site actually can pay, like Dynasty Owner. It's a totally different form of Dynasty, but Dynasty Owner is another one. That one, they use actual NFL salaries in the Dynasty League. But like if you're paying with your buddies and stuff like that, it's okay. I mean, I don't mind doing like PayPal or Venmo or something, and one person has to be responsible for it. And League Safe is definitely a way that it's an inexpensive way to make it, pretty more professional.
Yeah, so we ran into a little bit of issues. We used League Safe. We had someone actually in the UK in the league, and we had someone in Canada. Now there were with League Safe, there were a bunch of extra fees that way, and it was obviously fees for that, but then for the person in Canada, it was even more with everything kind of yep. And so then we decided we were going to do PayPal, or no, we're going to do Venmo. Because Venmo, you can obviously if buddies and everything, you'd have everything kind of in one site, right? But they don't have Venmo in the UK, so we had to kind of try to figure that out. And so this one person did PayPal, and then we just kind of upped it a little bit of fee. So then everyone basically is covering the PayPal, cost, because as a commissioner, I kind of took that on the first year. So when you're having these, obviously you have these discussions ahead of time and just kind of let people know that this is kind of how it goes. I mean, do you kind of have just everything kind of set how you want to do things when you're the commissioner?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we have kind of our league pause, and so after like some leagues they just go, And
Mm-hmm.
so like I said, I have a little bit of a pause where like between the Super Bowl and the NFL draft, we have the opportunity to make sure that everybody's back. We have the opportunity to make sure all payments are made, and we go over any league rule changes, and then everything just rolls over. And so that where it's clean, where like you don't have somebody that like doesn't pay, but they're making a bunch of moves and then they leave, or like somebody wants a rule change, but we've already made 5 trades, and it gives people a little bit of a break. But then, and like maybe not even wait till the actual draft. It's really kind of like the free agency. Like I told my guys today, like, hey, I'm gonna roll the league
Mm-hmm.
over on Friday, make sure everyone's good to go.
Mm-hmm.
And but that gives you an opportunity to make sure that like your ducks are in a row, and like you can also motivate people to get those payments in because you're making trades, you're making waiver claims, and I'm not doing anything because I haven't paid yet. And the commissioner can lock your settings on on MFL, my fantasy league. On Sleeper, I don't think I can do that, but I can obviously remove any moves that you've made and just make it clear, hey, you can't make moves until you've paid. No hard feelings. It's just in the rules.
Now, we've talked a lot about, kind of housekeeping with that. When you look at kind of rules and strategies, when you come into a new league, what are you kind of targeting as far as first of all the overall draft, and then we'll kind of get to the rookie drafts as well.
Yeah, I mean, first thing as far as getting to know your league mates, I treat this like a business.
Mm-hmm.
And like if you're gonna go in there and like get to know people, that's easy. And talking football, everybody's here for the same reason. It's a commonality. Throwing things out there. I'm not someone that's gonna go in there and be like, everyone that likes the Cowboys is an idiot, blah blah blah. I'm treading softly and just trying to get to know people. But as far as dynasty strategies and like hitting the draft, every league is a little different based on the settings. Sometimes I like to try different strategies and see how it works. If you do the same thing over and over again, you're never going to get different results, or you're going to have all the same players. And so, most of the time, I'll start out. You're gonna want younger players early. You can get some veterans later. So I'll start out with some receivers. Make sure I get at least one good running back in the first couple rounds and build off of that. Make sure that I have the opportunity to get some good, good rookie picks. Some people they put the rookie picks in the startup. I prefer that method.
Mm.
So some people will do a startup where like it's 1 through 12. You get one, you're going to get the 12th rookie pick. I got 12, I get the first rookie pick. I just put them in the draft. And
Mm-hmm.
so the way to do that is just you put the kickers in the draft. We don't have kickers in our league. And so the first kicker off the board is 101. The second kicker off the board is 102, 103. And then you can do your rookie draft. I prefer the rookie draft after the NFL draft. So you don't get, take Malik Willis 101.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you then kind of go into that dynasty rookie draft, I mean, are you just automatically, targeting quarterbacks if it's a super flex league, or what's your kind of strategy in the rookie draft?
Yeah. I mean, team needs is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a startup, I'm just trying to collect the best assets. So
Mm-hmm.
like I trade so much that the team that I draft in April or May is probably not the team I'm rolling out in September. But in the rookie draft, you're going to want to get as much assets as possible. So, but you still want to fill your needs because I know that like my roster needs a tight end or needs a receiver. So then, you go down there and that's what you do. But with the rookies, again, with the running backs, if a running back is, we'll say a 75 in your like grading scale and a receiver is an 80, a lot of people are going to jump the running back over the receiver because of need. And so, and sometimes you have to just pay the piper because you think, oh, well, I'll just trade back and get the running back. No, he's not going to be there because people are going to go running back heavy in your rookie drafts. It almost all the time your rookie running backs get overdrafted, especially if they have a landing spot that appears to be a clear path to fantasy production. Most people are very short-sighted.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to tell people, don't be short-sighted. That's how you draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Jonathan Taylor. That's how you get, that's how you draft someone like a Jerry Jeudy over Justin Jefferson. You think instantly like this guy's going to be good this year, so I'm not going to draft A.J. Brown because he's on the Titans. And like those guys will fall into your lap. Get value. Tiers are important. Do your own rankings. Like you can take my rankings and then you can adjust them to how you like it. But if you say that like these guys are in the same tier, let's just grab 3 running backs. We'll say Sean Tucker, Kendre Miller, and Zach Evans. You say they're all in the same tier. They all get drafted in the 3rd round, all have decent spots. You're sitting there at 110 and they're all available. Trade back to 201, get an extra 2nd round pick next year, and then take your 3rd favorite guy. Like that's a way that you can keep, collecting assets by trading back. But again, don't trade too far. If you like 3 players, don't trade back 5 picks. Trade back 3 picks, get that player plus a 3rd or a 2nd.
So when we look at this is going to be the first year that a lot of people in my league, almost everybody has done a rookie draft. And so it's going to be interesting feeling people out. But then also, when you say like 3 players that I like or someone else likes, I don't know. I think since no one has done it before, no one's really kind of locked into this specifically a strategy that way. So it may make go on like team fit. Obviously when you look at rookies, and my question then here would be, what rookies are you kind of really most interested to see where they will land, and where do you think obviously what are some of those rookies that are that you're watching?
Yeah, and so I mean the guy you're going to hear about the most is Bijan Robinson. And Bijan Robinson is the clear-cut 101, and even in your super flex leagues, he's kind of the undisputed 101, and for that reason, I would say most people with a 101 should trade the pick. And it's because you can get so much for him. I saw someone today said like they were looking at a trade and said, the 108 plus Travis Etienne plus Stephon Diggs isn't enough to get Bijan Robinson. And I was like, that's the reason you need to trade Bijan Robinson, because I saw someone get Ken Walker plus the 103.
Wow.
Trevor Lawrence straight up, Justin Jefferson straight up. And, he's a running back. And so you don't necessarily want a running back's a very volatile position. You don't want to, invest a lot. You trade 2 or 3 first-round picks for DeAndre Swift, and how'd that work out? Or Jonathan Taylor, it's just a volatile position when receivers a lot, not only longer, but a lot more consistent.
Well, yeah, and I look at my roster and I've kind of set myself up. I've got the 4th pick in the draft. But I've got a lot of young running backs. I've got Kenneth Walker. I do have Montgomery. I've got Javonte Williams, Tyler Algier, Breece Hall, and Antonio Gibson. So I've got
so you're in a great spot to trade back, because you're looking at quarterbacks. You might take a quarterback at 4. Bijan Robinson's going to be the 101. And then, the 2nd running back is really, it depends on people. Most people have Jahmyr Gibbs as the number 2, but he came in at, 5'9", 199 pounds. And there's not a lot of 5'9", 199 pound top 12 fantasy running backs in the last 10 years. So he's going to be someone that you hope is like an Alvin Kamara type. And, he appears to be that type of player. So a lot of people have him at number 2. Zach Charbonnet, and if you look at 10 rankings, you're probably going to see about 5 or 6 different number 3, 4, 5 running backs. Zach Charbonnet, Sean Tucker, Zach Evans, Tajay Spears, and so I would say that draft capital should help you more than landing spot. Go ahead. Yeah. You want somebody that's going to have round 2 or round 3 draft capital. So it's just there's a higher success rate for those guys getting on the field versus like Isaiah Pacheco is an outlier. There's not a lot of 7th round running backs that, so like we look at this draft, would you be shocked if the Kansas City Chiefs took a running back?
Mm-mm.
They have, what did they invest in Isaiah Pacheco? Nothing.
Right.
And so like James Robinson, undrafted running back. I know he had the Achilles injury, but before the Achilles injury, Jaguars took Travis Etienne.
Mm-hmm.
He was not safe. And so like Dameon Pierce, Tyler Algier, they're not that safe. They have low investment. Teams have low investment in them. And most teams have 2 or 3 running backs just in general, not even saying that like anything bad about the top guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's going to happen. Like we're going to see a running back drafted to somebody's, and you're going to go, what? Like, why did the Broncos get a running back, or why did the Giants get a running back? It happens.
So when you talk about kind of the running back position, obviously we got the top people, but what are the best landing spots for a running back in this draft? I mean, it would obviously be the Bills, or unless they sign someone.
I feel like we said the Bills every year the last 5 years, and so the Bills, you want a running back on a high-powered offense that's going to get good volume. And good volume in today's NFL is not the same as the 1990s. So like I was on a show on last week, and someone was like, well, like, do you really think Alexander Madison's going to get 20, touches a game? I was like, he doesn't need that. Like 15 touches a game is a good starting running back for fantasy football, especially if 3 or 4 of those touches are targets, like catches, because a target's worth 2.5 times what a carry is. So like you look at a guy like Damian Harris, he'll run, or Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's one of the best running backs in the league, but he doesn't really a top 5 fantasy, but he doesn't catch the ball. And so you want someone that's going to add something in the passing game, but you have to have a little bit of the rushing too. You can't have like, James White's, they don't usually have consistent production year after year, but someone that gets, 4 or 5 catches and 12 rushes like Alvin Kamara, they stick.
So now we talked about running backs. When you look at the wide receivers in the rookie draft, I've heard it's a little bit not as strong as a draft for wide receivers. When you're looking at the rookie draft, are there some receivers that you're willing to take in the 1st or 2nd round, or are you waiting to the 3rd?
Definitely 1st round. And receivers, like I said, generally last longer and are better dynasty assets than running backs. So people will overdraft these running backs based on, need, because every dynasty team needs a running back. But Jordan Addison, JSN are definitely 1st round, receivers. Zay Flowers has moved up my board. I think he's put on some weight, and I think a lot of people have moved him up to the number 3. And I was at the NFL Combine, got to take part in the media sessions, and he was a very popular guy. A lot of different people, like, that was kind of their 3rd receiver. Some people, it's Quentin Johnston out of TCU. Some people like Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee. Hyatt's, more of a speedster. He's only had 1 year of production, but it was a really good year of production. He got the award, the Blitnikoff Award for the best receiver in the league. This bunch.
So when you talk about receivers, then what are the teams then? I mean, obviously, the Vikings maybe need a wide receiver. Is that kind of an optimum place for one of these receivers that would be just kind of jump out at you to say, yep, I want to draft that one?
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at the quarterback, and can this quarterback sustain? Usually rookie quarterbacks can't prop up 2 fantasy receivers. Kirk Cousins can, and so putting him in the Vikings would be good. Or if the rookie is like the number 1 guy, like the Giants are a spot where they really need somebody. They have Isaiah Hodgins and Wando Robinson coming off an ACL. They have Sterling Shepard coming off a major injury. Nothing really at tight end. The Dallas Cowboys, they could use a receiver. But looking at these high pass volume offenses that need either a 1 or a 2, the Texans are definitely someone that are consistently mocked to get one. And I don't know if it's going to be a great fantasy year 1, if Jackson Smith and Jigba goes there with Bryce Young or CJ Stroud.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be a good year 1? I don't know.
And they got the other guy, was it from Alabama, that's coming back too?
John Mechie's coming back. They got Nico Collins. Brandon Cooks is still on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put JSN or Addison there, I don't know if it's a great spot, but if you put him over there in Minnesota or with the Giants, or let's say the Chiefs, it could be, a better spot. But I think the Buffalo Bills are going to draft a receiver this year.
Yeah, Buffalo would be a good spot. And you talked about the Patriots earlier with their running backs, but I always say death taxes and either don't draft, if it's redraft, don't draft a Patriots running back or wide receiver. I just feel like, obviously we don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be there either.
Yeah, I mean, they did kind of debunk it with the running back last year. Going back to the 15 touches, my co-host said, well, I don't trust, Ramondre Stevenson because I don't touch Patriots back. He's never going to get enough touches. And I said, well, what's enough touches for you? And he said 15. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, that's 255 touches for the year. And he had 270. So he did get more than, what your perception is. And he ended up as number 8 on the running backs. But they could add another running back Patriots style and completely, kill our hopes and dreams of Ramondre Stevenson. They're in the market for a receiver, and we'll see how no receivers were signed today in free agency. So we don't know where someone's going to go, and there's, if you have a good quarterback like the Chargers, that would be a great spot for, one of these rookies to go. Keenan Allen's on the way out of town. Mike Williams is, constantly dinged up. You tie something, let's say you tie Jordan Addison with Justin Herbert for the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested. I'm definitely spending a top 5, top 6, dynasty pick on that.
Well, speaking of the signal callers then that are going to throw these wide receivers the ball, do you think some of these quarterbacks, I mean, there's really only 2 or 3, big name ones, but do you think they may get overdrafted because they're a big name and maybe just won't pan out? I mean, in Dynasty?
Yeah. I mean, you're going to have, no one's going to have 100% hit rate. Out of those 12 players or 24 players drafted in the first 2 rounds, not every one of them is going to hit for various reasons. Usually talent is the situation. Like, people drafted Treylon Burks last year because of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, have him. Go ahead. You can have him. You can have Sky Moore. I'm going to take Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson and be totally fine because I'll take talent over situation. And so people were taking, Treylon Burks at 103, 104. I'm like, you guys are crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trading back to the 107, 108, getting Garrett Wilson, and then a first next year. And so I'm looking at the talent and draft capital over situation. I want a guy that's got, day 2, at least day 2 draft capital. So round 1 through 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want one of my guys that I liked. If you have a guy that's your 9th best receiver and you move him to your wide receiver 1 after the draft, you're doing it wrong. Like,
say that one more time.
Yeah, if he's the wide receiver 9 before the draft and the wide receiver 1 after the draft, then you're doing it wrong.
I can see that. Yeah. So during at what point then are you trading rookie picks that are, for the rookie draft, or do you kind of allow trading during the draft, or does it have to be done all before the draft?
You should 100% do picks trading during your draft. All my rookie drafts are slow drafts.
Mm-hmm.
So we usually have like a 4 to 8 hour clock, or even even a 24-hour clock, but at least like a 4 to 8 hour clock. Most of us are dads and we're, doing dad stuff and you can't be sitting there at a computer for 2 hours. But it adds so much fun to your rookie draft. Like you get on the clock and all of a sudden you're like, hey, picks on the block. And it's just everybody's going crazy and things are happening. It makes the league, fun. And then I prefer to wait until the rookie draft. One, like if you let's say you traded the 101 for a player right now. A player could get hurt, suspended, arrested, all that stuff could happen. It's unfortunate, but it's happened. It's part of the NFL, part of all the leagues. The 101's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to get hurt, arrested, injured, suspended, anything. So, and on draft day, like, I sent you an offer and I'm like, man, I'm really interested. And I gave you an offer and I sent you a screenshot of the trade calculator. And it's just, I'm giving you the perfect deal. I guarantee that same deal is going to be on the table during the draft. And I typically recommend doing the draft like the weekend of the NFL draft, or like some leagues do it the Monday after or the weekend after. But do it right after the NFL draft. Everyone's got the rookie fever. You know where they've been drafted to. Everyone's got, the same playing field because they listened to Daniel Jeremiah for 48 straight hours. And so, like, it's not like you knew the rookies and I didn't, and you had a leg up on me because we drafted in March.
So yeah, so it's well, then it's even better not to wait till training camp either, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can wait till training camp, but I mean, your traditional rookie drafts are typically in May. They're not in August. Some can, and I will tell you this: I have one league that traditionally does it in August, and they're a bunch of redrafters, and that's what they started with, and they like it. Plus, like, you don't draft somebody that tears their ACL in training camp. And all my other leagues are in May. And the guys that are in the same leagues still vote for that to be in August because they're like, it's different. And I did those drafts and it was way different. Like the ADP was so different. Like George Pickens went from like 210 to 110. And like the boards changed tremendously from all the preseason hype and everything.
I do like that. Actually, the way that you're doing it. I mean, because obviously, everyone kind of gets their, pick for their teams, or they see where everyone goes. And then you have that sense of, okay, you're excited for it. And just to kind of keep that excitement. Because, when you look at some of these dynasty leagues and some of the people in the league, not everybody is engaged as everyone else. I'm engaged regardless. Even if I have money in or not, I'm engaged because it's just what I enjoy. And to keep people engaged, what are some other things that you do to keep people engaged throughout the whole season, and to make sure they're continuing to keep their rosters up to date from week to week?
Yeah, the group chat is extremely important. You have to be active. We're always throwing in there like news and talking about it. We're always, like if someone says like, hey, my league's dead, nobody trades, I'm like, when's the last time you made a trade? Sometimes you making a trade, even if like I'm trading you like some kind of random player for 308 in the rookie draft, nothing's going to break the news, but like it just gets the people looking and chirping in the league. People get interested. Doing contests and things like that. March Madness is here. Doing a March Madness, doing a football squares, doing contests that's like, keeps the league. If you guys live near each other, getting together, talking about the league, all those kind of things, going to the draft together, like that kind of brings the league together.
I agree. All good stuff. Well, I definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing a lot of your dynasty insights. Where can everyone find you? And what are you kind of up to at this time as you're preparing for the NFL draft?
Yeah, we're doing rookie profiles and mock drafts. Everybody go do as many mock drafts as possible. You don't just go build a house without, knowing what you're doing and building a blueprint. You got to practice. So mock drafts are free, most of them. So mock draft. And, but yeah, check out our player profiles on SGPN Fantasy Football on YouTube. And you can follow me at Dynasty Dorks on TikTok or Twitter.
Love it. Thanks again, Dave. I look forward to reading all that, liking, subscribe, all of that stuff. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, man. Good luck this season.
Once again, this has been NFL Outdated Cover 2 Series with Dave Heilman. Thanks again.